Which version of Steins Gate is the best? Is the anime enough? Or should you play through the 30-hour visual novel to get the full experience? What about the manga? Or the stage play? And what about? No, not that. Never that. This was originally going to be a simple comparison of each version of Steins Gate, but after playing through the visual novel again, I realized it's not even close. The anime is by far the best version of Steins Gate, and I want to walk you through how every single change it made affects the story, and how it clearly understands each of the characters even more than the original authors. Not that the visual novel isn't still a masterpiece, because it absolutely is, so after we're all on the same page, we'll talk about why you should still play it, and why you should go watch the stage play too, because it's actually just that good. And then finally, we'll talk about the manga. Yeah, that one's just really bad, and we're gonna shit all over it for funsies at the end. So why is the anime the best? If you ask your average weeaboo, they'll tell you that it's basically everything important in the story, but without any of the fluff. But that is only half true. The first thing you'll notice while playing the visual novel is that compared to the anime, everything is so much slower and calmer. Now, I don't just mean it's longer because it's a novel, although of course it is. What I mean is that Okabe is not very loud. In fact, he's kind of a huge bitch in comparison. In the anime, he's constantly shouting and just brings this energy and commanding presence to the screen. Here, that energy is almost non-existent. And it's not just him. Kurisu comes across as way less assertive and way wimpier too. Every scene with them just has so much less energy. Take Kurisu's introduction from the anime. And here's the visual novel. In the anime, she's quick, decisive, and commanding. Here, she just kinda grabs his arm a little. Or in the lecture scene in the anime, Kurisu firmly stands her ground against Okabe's rude interruption and smugly trounces him before he goes off to sulk with Daru.
早計というより理論上否定されるべきものではないかというのが私の見解なのですが。
Here, she's actually thrown off by him, and then he compliments her wit in the narration at the end.
まあ、はい、いいですよ。
It's like, who are you people? I don't want to understate just how different this is. Now, it's worth mentioning that this is like a 30 to 40 hour game, so maybe the same level of energy just wouldn't quite work here, but they are almost completely different people, and it feels lacking in comparison. Kurisu not completely owning Okabe feels wrong because this scene shows us not just her composure and her wit, but also her pride as she takes a sick pleasure in absolutely humiliating this jackass in front of a room full of people. And Okabe reeling from the loss shows us not only his pride, but his utter admiration for her. She's smarter than him and he's jealous. He's upset that she's on a completely different level than him and it bothers him, but it also bothers him that he's so enthralled by her. Okabe doesn't fall in love with Kurisu at first sight. He falls in love with her when she shows him she's not just his equal, but better than him, and this is the first time he recognizes just how special she is. The second time is, of course, when she puts on the lab coat without Okabe even mentioning it. There's literally no reason to. It's not a real lab, it's a bunch of idiots hanging out in a dusty apartment. Daru isn't wearing one, and Okabe's a fucking lunatic. Here, the lab coat is not even a symbol, it's a symbol tainted by association with Okabe. Yet, she feels compelled to wear it anyway. Just like Okabe, feeling like and being seen as a scientist is just as important as the actual curiosity that drives her to question the universe around her. And so the simple act of putting on this lab coat shows us just how alike they really are. So when Okabe in the anime has them pose together, it's goofy, but it's also sincere.
白衣やはり研究機関において白衣こそがユニフォーム誰もMayuriも何度言ってもそれがわからないようだが
The anime understands this dynamic between them, this rivalry and this rapport, and builds on it in just about every episode, giving them way more alone time together, and it brings them closer and closer as they keep debating and fighting. Like when Kurisu is doing laundry, they debate whether or not the phone wave name subject to change is really a time machine, and they both fight to be the one to storm off in a huff. Or when they trip the breaker and the lights go out and they almost kiss. Or in this scene before completing the time leap machine where they go to the park and talk about her worries about time machines and her father, and that despite all of these problems and insecurities and all of her fears, she's going to build the time leap machine anyway because she just can't help it. She's a scientist, an experiment-loving girl through and through, and nothing she ever does will ever change that. Giving them all this extra screen time and making them both louder, snarkier, and more confident makes the sparks between them really fly and makes their romance all the more believable. In the visual novel, I felt an attraction between them, but in the anime, every scene with them is just dripping with chemistry. The anime understands exactly who these characters are, and it changes it in all the right ways to bring out their relationship. And it's not just Okabe and Kurisu, but every single side character as well. Take Faris. The reason she agrees to cancel the D-mail is because she realizes that this life, her current life with her father, isn't real. And the last piece of evidence is Okabe's knowledge of her life at Meikui Nyanyan, which no one, not even her father, is supposed to know about. Okabe being able to peer into her heart and her memories is proof to her of what she's been feeling this whole time, that her whole reality is a lie, a mere dream that she needs to wake up from. But in the visual novel, she developed this into a plan with a public website. So her cafe literally being public knowledge cheapens this a lot. This proof, this witness to her dreams is so much less effective when it's just not at all inconceivable that Okabe knows about it. The anime fully understands this point about her character, that deep down she knows what reality is supposed to be, and this isn't it. And so when Faris sends the D-mail to bring back her father, only in the anime does she hesitate.
やっぱりメールはしなくても。
フェイリス放電が始まった
And it's this doubt, this hesitation to run away, to escape, that really ties her character together. Her entire life is playing a role, this obnoxious, cutesy #1 cat girl maid. And she's so tied to this role, you'd almost think it is her, but she knows that's all it is, a fiction, a lie. So when the chance to bring back her father comes to her, she pounces on it, even though she knows it's just another escape. So later when she says she needs to return to her real life, this isn't coming out of nowhere. It isn't just that her memories from other world lines are showing her two different realities. It's that it's something she's been struggling with her whole life, that she's been running away from. This is why it's so important that she uses nyan, because here she finally stops. Here she realizes that she can't run away from reality. She realizes that no matter how many times she puts on those ears, no matter what mask she puts on, she still has to face her real life in the real world. So her hesitation at sending the D-mail is such a small change, but her character feels empty without it, without this extra layer of denial that she has to go through. And then in the end, when she says goodbye to her father and tells him she loves him before sending her final D-mail, this comes full circle as she accepts her life for what it is. Faris looks this reality in the face and says goodbye, both literally and figuratively. It's a sacrifice she has to make, and hearing her say it makes this scene all the more powerful. So before we move on to the next character, I have a couple more points about the Faris arc. 1. When Okabe confronts her about Mayuri's death, only in the anime does he ask her if she wants Mayuri to die.
どうしてマユリが死んでもいいって言うのか
いいわけないにゃ。
フェイリス
Okabe asks this because he's so caught up with saving Mayuri that he literally never considers that the wish Faris made might be to bring someone back to life. Mayuri is the most precious thing in the world, so what kind of person would want to deny her life? And it's only when she finally opens up and tells him what her wish was, her father's life, that he realizes how selfish he's been. Who is he to deny this girl her father? What makes his life more precious than Mayuri's? This choice, this power to grant life and death, is the realm of God, and he would have refused it had Faris not insisted that this is the way things are meant to be. Lastly, and this is honestly kind of a minor nitpick, but in the visual novel, Okabe has to point out that Faris stops saying Nyan when she gets serious. I feel this cheapens it just a little bit because it's really obvious and it's something we should be left to realize for ourselves, but the story points us in our face and is like, see, she's emotional. I fucking get it, dude. She's being serious. Anyway, Suzuha. The lab party with Suzuha is way longer in the anime. It really takes the time to show Suzuha finally able to relax away from her life filled with nothing but war and violence. At this party, she's finally able to let her guard down and be herself. So when she leaves this newfound peace with her new friends behind, it's all the more meaningful that she gives it all up and travels back to the past. This entire time, we're seeing her put up this unnaturally cheery attitude, this complete defiance of the darkness she comes from. It's a face she puts on, and in the visual novel, we almost never see it drop. But in expanding on the lab party, by giving her the time to be vulnerable, to be a normal girl, we get to see her for who she really is. She doesn't have this cheery air because she doesn't need to. She's happy. The other effect this scene has is that we get to see her finally get along with Kurisu. This entire time she sees Kurisu as evil, as the mother of the time machine. But it's important that she lets this idea go because we leave her with optimism as she travels back to the past in order to create a brighter future. So giving us time to see her at the party completely ties the world together. Not just the present and the future, but the past and the new, unknown future that lies beyond Steins Gate, too. And then this becomes so much more powerful when they get the letter about Suzuha's suicide. Okabe sends the cancellation D-mail to prevent her from leaving, and Mayuri protests, afraid that he's going to simply erase all their friendship, erase the memories that they built together at this party. This is much more meaningful when we have a real understanding of these memories. And then when he reverses it in the visual novel, there's this huge gap between sending it and reading the second letter. But in the anime, it comes basically instantly, and it's way more effective because this gap kills a lot of the energy of this scene. But having it take place immediately instead takes this energy and reverses it, turning a huge low into a high. And everything they added, everything they took away, and everything they changed just pulls all of this energy together, and everything about the story feels so much more complete. So despite being quite a bit shorter, the anime manages to expand on basically all of the most important bits of every single side character, and the story feels fuller and more complete in every single way. In Okabe's date with Rukako, the anime completely doubles down on this awkwardness, and on top of Kurisu reading a dating manual to him like the virgin she is, she and Daru follow him around town as he drags Rukako on this extremely uncomfortable date and watch him fail at being a normie as he tries to imitate the manual. What Rukako's arc does is highlight everything positive about Okabe's character. He doesn't like Okabe because he's some sort of perfect gentleman. He likes him because he's raw, he's honest, and he cares about his friends. He likes him for the kind of person he is, not the kind of person everyone else wants him to be. So while Okabe trying to awkwardly be Rukako's boyfriend is great in the visual novel, the anime just does this so much better as it takes the dating manual thing and takes it to its logical extreme. Not only is it obviously funnier, they talk about how Rukako was with an absolute gentleman, nothing like Okabe, and the complete and utter contrast between this and Okabe coming back to train Rukako as his disciple is huge. In Moeka's arc in the visual novel, when they confront Mr. Braun spares Moeka and kills himself right there and then, and his daughter sees it, goes crazy, and then time leaps 2,000 times from the future in order to get revenge and be the one to kill Moeka, and then laugh in Okabe's stupid face and tell him that she's the one that kills him 15 years from now. Not only does this for some reason create a massive plot hole where Nai time leaps and disappears in front of Okabe, Mr. Braun would never do this. Not that he wouldn't really secretly be caring enough to spare Moeka as Okabe suspects. In fact, we know he is. It's just that the only thing he cares about are his daughter and CRT TVs. And the entire point of killing himself is to spare his daughter from getting involved in all of this. But sparing Moeka and killing himself in his home with his daughter present does exactly that. He wouldn't do that, which is why he doesn't do this in the anime. He brings them to an empty construction site where he pulls the trigger on Moeka and then himself. It just makes more sense. But also, instead of just being Okabe and Moeka, Kurisu comes along and she makes this scene so much more tense by yelling at Okabe to grab Mr. Braun's phone after he collapses on the ground. 2 people just died in front of them, and it's horrifying, but they can't forget the reason they came here, and it's Kurisu who snaps Okabe back to reality. Her presence takes this tension and cuts it like a knife and elevates this scene far beyond what it was in the visual novel. Mayuri is the one that keeps Okabe grounded in reality, but it's Kurisu that holds him to it. It's always Kurisu, and even here, she's there for him. Okabe refuses to give up, refuses to surrender to the universe, and it's Kurisu that stops him, telling him if seeing Mayuri die again and again and again doesn't hurt him, then his heart is already broken. And this line, this one line that's only in the anime, is so key. It strikes right at the heart of everything Okabe's been through, everything he is, everything we've been feeling up until this point. He's faced the endless eternal void in battle and come out a broken man. And he's so broken that he can't even see how broken he is. And it's Kurisu that understands him. She understands everything he's been through because she understands that no one, not even her, can possibly understand him or the choices he's had to make. It's Kurisu that picks up this shell of a man, picks up the shattered pieces of his heart, and puts them back together with just one kiss. And then another. And another. And it hurts her to face death, but she's got too much pride to let her fear define her, to let her selfishly choose to live when the universe commands her not to. And it's this pride that makes her leave without saying goodbye to everyone but the man she can't bear to not say goodbye to. It's this pride that makes her, even in this last farewell, throw that bottle of Dr. Pepper and vanish into the morning as she turns and leaves for the airport. But it's love that brings her back. It's love that overcomes even her pride when she realizes that she can't just let go. She loves Okabe and she can't leave without telling him, and that even if she lives on in some universe, even if her soul is just a collection of the infinite possibilities that make a single Kurisu, even if she's one speck among infinites, even if she disappears into the endless reaches of time and space, no matter what, she can't bear to leave without this Okabe, hearing those words from this Kurisu in the here and now. And it's not that the original doesn't have this feeling, it's that the anime takes this and fucking runs with it. The dialogue is more thoughtful, more philosophical, more emotional, and having her take control of her last goodbye by throwing a bottle of Dr. Pepper is more Kurisu, more prideful. This is what the Kurisu ending was always meant to be, and all the anime did was bring it to life. The anime doesn't just add scenes to expand their relationship, it looks for ways to build existing scenes around it, and as a result, the ending is an explosive climax that tears at your heart far more than the original could ever hope to. But not only has the anime put all this thought into who each of the characters are, it's also got a much clearer idea of who they aren't. Several lines have been rearranged and given to other characters because they're important to the story, but they don't really fit in. When they're trying to turn Ruka into a girl, Kurisu is the one that originally brings up the meat and veggies thing. It should be pretty obvious why this was changed, but there's no way she would give this kind of idea any real thought. Maybe if this was after trying to come up with a D-male and, like the anime says, simply try to make him feel better. But no. She actually brings this up immediately before even considering sending a D-mail. Now, she says that she still doesn't believe in it, but the fact that she felt the need to say it at all is kind of a huge affront to her character. In the anime, Ruka is the one that brings up the meat and veggies thing because of course he is. And there's a really important line when Okabe finds Mayuri visiting her grandmother's grave. When they turn to leave, he tells her that when this is all over, he'll tell her everything. Mayuri keeps Okabe grounded in reality, and it's a touching line that brings to earth all of the crazy things that Okabe's been going through and really shows us the special relationship that Okabe has been risking his life and his sanity for. Mayuri also says this before she dies in the subway when she realizes there's something going on, something that he can't tell her no matter how much he cares for her. And then in the visual novel, she says that someday they should have that party. And this line shows us that Mayuri is so much more perceptive than she lets on. And especially in the graveyard, she doesn't say it because she's thinking it, but is actually so perceptive that she doesn't want to ask. She already feels like a burden on Okabe, on her best friend, and asking this would put more pressure on him. But Okabe is also more perceptive than he lets on, and so he says this because he can read her mind as well. As further proof, only in the anime does he ask her if she wants to buy an upa as they turn to leave, and she laughs because that is exactly what she was thinking. In the visual novel, he suggests dango simply because it was a tradition they had. And it's the same reason that Okabe is the one that brings up the party in the anime. He says it because she's thinking it, but doesn't want to say it and be a burden on him. This line is so important, and the anime rearranged not just one, but 2 scenes in order to bring it out. Other lines have simply been removed because they contradict the story. When Okabe is thinking about who sent the Jello threat emails, he suspects Moeka, which is oddly prescient. Too prescient, in fact. Okabe's main character flaw is that he's too trusting. If he sees someone as a friend, he trusts them unconditionally. Okabe trusts his friends so much that he literally doesn't even consider that Moeka might have lied about the D-mail that she sent until he tries canceling it, even though this is after she already betrayed him. This is why he gives so much information to both Moeka and Suzuha while knowing basically nothing about them, and lo and behold, he loses almost everything because of it. So while this is literally just a single offhand remark, it's pretty offensive to hear him think this because Okabe would never, ever consider it. Similarly, before discovering that the 42-inch CRT is acting as the lifter, Okabe stops and considers that one of the TVs might actually be it. It's simple when you think about it, but it's too smart. The reason they only figure it out by accident is because everything about it is such an unbelievable coincidence. So while it isn't much of a stretch for him to consider this, him actually doing it somewhat cheapens the idea that this is basically providence. Now, yes, these are extremely minor lines in a story with thousands and thousands of lines of text. And if it were just one of them, I'd overlook it. But there are countless lines the anime changed because they could be improved on, or don't fit, or could be totally rearranged. The visual novel honestly feels like a rough draft. It feels like a masterpiece that needs some heavy editing to truly shine, and the anime is exactly that. The anime feels like exactly what Steins was always meant to be. It's fucking perfect. And this isn't to say the visual novel is bad. Obviously, the anime is working off some pretty excellent source material, and we're gonna talk about why you should definitely still play it next. But as far as the definitive Steins Gate, there is no question. It's the anime because it understands every single one of the characters far better than the visual novel ever did. Before we move on, however, I just want to mention a few more small changes that the anime made that I think are really important. There are way too many to actually talk about them all, but I really need you to see just how much thought was put into literally every single scene of the anime. Like, Kurisu putting her hands on Ruka's chest and then beating her head against the wall is not just funny, but gives femininity to both characters. Or when everyone walks in and starts blabbing about the time machine to Moeka and Okabe goes,
俺だ。まずいことになった。
It amplifies the irony between every single character in this scene. almost all of Steins' dialogue is built on irony, and this really sells it. Or like when Moeka shoots Mayuri, in the anime it's tense and dramatic. In the visual novel, it actually focuses on her mumbling about FB. Obviously, she still does this in the anime, but at this point, it's irrelevant to us, so focusing on it sucks us right out of this scene. Or like when Okabe gets the jello threat and runs back to the lab where Mayuri and Kurisu are showering. Not only is this one of the best animated scenes, it really ups the intensity by simply turning the lights off. It's eerie, and they probably shouldn't be off, and it makes it almost the girl's fault for turning the lights off. Not really, but him just barging into the shower is way more believable when there's something off about the lab. And how could I possibly forget the Faris cup? There are countless changes to every line of every scene of every episode. The anime writers not only managed to perfectly condense a 30-hour visual novel into a mere 24 episodes, they've gone over every goddamn line with a fine comb and expanded on everything they could, and despite being much shorter, it feels so much fuller and more complete, like the masterpiece it was always meant to be. So, now that I've thoroughly turned you off of the visual novel, let me tell you about why you should definitely still play it. I know, I'm a walking contradiction. Welcome to my kingdom. Please like and subscribe. First, I think we need to talk real briefly about the visual style because it's fucking gorgeous. It's way different than not just the anime, but most anime and most visual novels. Every scene and especially every character is covered in this mottled, almost sparkly appearance. It gives each character a kind of surreal feel, and honestly, it's kinda sad that it's not in the anime, but I can't imagine this would be possible to animate unless you use 3D models, which we're getting there, but not quite, and this was made in 2011. The other thing they can just never come across in the anime is the email system. You'll frequently get emails from all the other characters to have these little side chats with. I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, while they never interrupt any of the really serious scenes, sometimes you'll be having debates with Kurisu and Daru and you'll just be bombarded with this extremely loud ringtone, and it's honestly kind of annoying.
大丈夫。
なんだと？
洗脳されてる時ってさ、下まぶたの中によくチップが仕込まれてることがあるんだよね。
But on the other hand, not only is it really fun to have all these silly background conversations with Faris and the other characters, I guess, having story beats that you get to control gives a really special edge to some of the characters. Like when you're running away from the viral attackers with Faris and end up hiding in the ramen shop warehouse, you get a random phone call from Kurisu which gives you away completely. You can ignore it and end up slipping out with Faris, or you can answer it and Kurisu will tell you how to escape by coating the room with flour. It's a nice touch.
その部屋にある小麦粉をばらまいて脱出しろ。あとは照明をスイッチオン。
了解した。
More significantly, there's one scene where you wake up from a nap and there's like 6 unread emails from Moeka just sitting there. You can choose to ignore them, or not. They get brought up not too long after, but having the freedom to discover this by yourself kind of makes you feel like you're the one waking up to a bunch of fucking nonsense. Or in the first scene with Moeka in the lab, everyone's having a serious discussion and the ringtone just keeps going off with messages from Moeka. You can read them all, but it's super fucking annoying, so you just stop and eventually she just gives up. It's honestly super clever. Alright, now that that's all out of the way, let's talk about the real reason to play the visual novel, which is all of the different endings. I don't think this will ruin your enjoyment of it if you haven't played it, assuming you've watched the anime, but spoilers, obviously. Reminder that I've added timestamps for the entire video if you want to skip ahead. I think my favorite alternate ending is the Faris route. Instead of undoing the D-mail, he tries to protect both her father and the IBM computer and ends up erasing the present. Everyone's alive, but the lab and all of his friendships never even existed except for Faris. And because the phone wave name subject to change doesn't exist in this world line, there's no way for him to go back. And I really like this ending because, well, for one, I think Faris is actually a great fit for him. Like Kurisu, she's smart and confident, but unlike her, no one else can match his stupid Chunibyo bullshit. So having him give up his life and become a pro gamer as her lover and Rainet partner just works. But also in this ending we get to see the real dangers of using a time machine. Every email he sends, every change to the past is a risk. The power to control time is the power of a god, and playing with time is a folly no mortal should dare. He takes this risk over and over and over, and this time he tries to cheat time, and it ends with him never having his lab, never knowing any of his friends, and dooming the future to be taken over by CERN. It's cute and charming to see him and Faris be pro gamers, but there's a darkness to each of the different endings. And it's this darkness that not only opens us up to the other sides of the characters, but really fleshes out the story of Okabe and the time machine. For example, in the Suzuha ending, we see him trying to take power over time and keep everyone alive by living the same 2 days over and over and over again, and it drives him mad. In trying to control time, it ends up controlling him instead. He thinks himself a god, but in reality, he's a prisoner. He's trapped, unable to escape the chains of these 48 hours, and it slowly drives him insane until Suzuha snaps him out of it. She restores color to his world and reminds him that happiness comes from the unknown. It's hope of dreaming to create a better future that makes life worth living. And they set off in search of this future by saying goodbye to the present and leaving in the time machine together. I think maybe the weakest ending is the Rukako ending. In it, he decides to let Rukako stay a girl and gives up Mayuri's life, tired of this power over time, over everyone's destiny, over everyone's happiness, and convinces himself that Mayuri will still die no matter what he does. And I think it's exactly this weakness, this giving up, that is meaningful here. It isn't a great ending by itself, but its existence makes the other endings better. It's unsatisfying. He lets Rukako be a girl and decides to make the most out of this world line, eventually having a child together. But it's lacking. This isn't the future we were promised, and it shows us what happens if he just gives up. And realizing that the reason the IBM computer isn't there is because Rukako broke it while sweeping, we think there has to be a way to prevent this with another D-mail. But then we think about what we just saw with the Faris ending, and we realize together with Okabe that he can't cheat time, and what he really needs to do is undo every single D-mail that he sent. Instead, he lets Mayuri die. He realizes the emptiness of his world as he watches her die, collapsing on the ground in front of him, and realizes he's going to live with this choice. And back in the lab, Kurisu, instead of trying to change his mind, sees his pain and offers to make him food. She realizes that she can't possibly understand why he made this choice, because no one can. He has to make a choice that no one else is capable of making, and she too realizes that maybe they shouldn't have the right to decide who lives or dies. It's her perfectly understanding him, despite not understanding him at all, that makes her so special, that makes her someone so worthy of his love, more worthy of his love than anyone. Somehow, the Rukako ending only strengthens the Kurisu romance. This is why she's best girl. And Kurisu realizes that what he has to do now is embrace his decision to not rot in his inaction and let this choice go to waste. He has to cherish the girl he did choose to save in this world line, Rukako, and love her the best he can. Because Rukako feels the burden of Mayuri's life, not sure how she can deal with the responsibility that Mayuri died for this gift, and because she still has memories of being a dude, how could she ever live like this? And so it's Okabe's responsibility to justify this choice, to help her embrace her life as a girl and make her feel like a woman, which of course means putting a dick between her legs. Hey, let's be adults here. It's called reproduction and it's beautiful. You can read this doujinshi to learn how it went. Just kidding. This is a Futanari doujin with Daru. It's Yeah, this joke has gone on far enough. Joke, he says, as if he hasn't already jerked. In every ending but the true ending, Okabe is never triumphant over time and space. He gives in to the idea that fate isn't something he has the power to control and lets himself take comfort in what he has. He never once faces victory nor defeat, merely a melancholic truce with the universe. So, all of these endings come together and really push the true ending to new heights as he emerges the one and only Hoen Kyoma, master of chaos and time and space. He overcomes the butterfly effect and the dangers of playing with time. He escapes the prison of time loops, of apathy, of world-line convergence, and arrives at the promised unknown world full of possibilities. Steins Gate. And most importantly, he overcomes himself, both literally and figuratively, as he deceives his past self. It's a complete and utter triumph over the universe, and seeing these other endings, these other failed world lines, only pushes this triumph to greater and greater heights. And despite all of the flaws in the visual novel, it's worth playing just for this because it's a major part of what makes the story so damn great. So now that I've completely resold you on the visual novel, God, I'm so smart, please like and subscribe, let's move on to the other adaptations, the manga, boo, and the stage play, yay, and talk about them. Before we do though, let's just briefly discuss some of the things there were never room for in the anime. Kurisu actually explains complicated theories of time travel in her lecture pretty well, and then again uses magical girls to explain care black holes to Daru. This is just really good. Honestly, as a semi-professional science communicator myself, this is some pretty high-quality science communication, and I appreciate this a fucking lot. It's not called science adventure for nothing, I guess, and it really does deserve praise just for this. And while most of the dialogue can be abbreviated as it is in the anime, some of it just really benefits from the extra length. Like the pin badge guy. Okay, so this might be funnier if you can actually understand what he's saying in Japanese, but this is just not how broken Japanese works. LMAO.
クライアントカムヒアなのは yesterday なことよろしい。Japanese やっとプライベートインフォメーションの重要さについてスタートらしい。Yes! Good!
This sounds like a Japanese person trying to use English, not an English person trying to use Japanese, and it's fucking absurd. Or, if we can be serious for a moment, Kurisu's memories of the other world lines. Okabe finds Kurisu lying on the roof of the Rarakan building, contemplating life and death, and a sudden rainstorm drives them inside where, just for a moment, time comes to a complete stop. And it's here where the world seems like a cold and empty ruin as they sit together, huddled in the dark stairwell, seeking shelter from the rain, that they talk about Kurisu's death and her place in the universe, as they both silently realize that no matter how much they've come to love each other, Okabe can only choose Mayuri. After a while, they leave their separate ways, unable to bear being apart, yet unable to stand being together. Okabe comes back to the lab 2 hours later to find a single message from Kurisu, who has long since returned to her hotel. It's a quote about living life day by day and a message telling him to do what he knows he has to, silently resigning herself to her fate as she leaves the world in Okabe's hands. If I were to pick just one scene that the visual novel does better, it would be this one because it's this melancholy, this slowness that makes the scene work. It's the feeling of being a single point frozen in time as they miserably huddle together in the damp cold, desperately wanting to leave this moment behind while wishing it would never end. So, yes, the visual novel absolutely has its merits. But why choose between the anime and the visual novel when you could choose both? Have your 2D and your 3D too, so to speak. That's right. I'm of course talking about the stage play. If the anime is the best because it perfectly understands the visual novel, the stage play rocks because it perfectly understands both of them and turns them into 3 of the greatest hours you could possibly spend your life on. So if you haven't seen the stage play, you might be like, wait, what the fuck? Really? Live action anime on stage? But trust me, you need to see this for 3 reasons. First, and I may be biased because I've spent at least 50 hours translating the first half and so far 2 of the endings, but honestly, it is fucking sublime and is easily the greatest live action adaptation ever made. I mean, come on, you have to see this. Second, it has multiple endings, which that's just brilliant. They worked multiple endings into the stage play. Awesome. So, if you wanted to experience the others but don't want to spend 30 hours playing through the visual novel, this is a fantastic option at just a 10th the runtime. And in fact, I actually think this handles the alternate endings maybe even better than the original. Seriously, it's that good. Note, only the true ending and almost 3 of the alternate endings have been translated so far, so this isn't exactly a replacement yet. Check back in a year or 2. Lastly, and most importantly, this really is a masterpiece in its own right. The first question that probably comes to your mind is how on earth would they have taken the greatest anime ever and shrunk it down to fit on stage and still be good? And the thing about Steins Gate is that most of the story takes place in just a couple locations. The lab, the radio building, the shrine, that's most of it. If you've watched my other videos, you should know that stories are never, ever about what happens. Stories are about the characters those things happen to. And since Steins Gate is mostly just characters hanging out and talking, putting it on stage isn't really a huge stretch. But we know that Steins Gate is a fucking masterpiece, so what is different about the stage play? And oh man, am I dying to tell you, so buckle your seatbelts and hold on to your dicks as I lay this out. The first thing you'll notice that's different about the stage play is, well, the stage itself. And honestly, it's a work of fucking genius because it simply adds these little extra touches to the performance that make it truly great, rather than merely good. For one, the stage spins. It's a simple touch, but it adds so much tension and nuance. Like when they do the whole Gel Nana revelation, not only does it spin just like the microwave, it hides Okabe's hands, letting him switch the bananas with the Gel Nana without us seeing. Then there's the big curtains that give a grandiose feel to the stage and lets them project the occasional background or cell phone screen. There's the ever-present time machine, which is literally just a box with a door. But as any kid can tell you, buddy, that is a time machine. There's the little gachapon machine that rolls in at the side. There's 3 different levels and this huge gap in the middle that gives so much more range to the character's actions. There's only so much you can do on stage, but Steins Gate does absolutely all of it. There are countless little touches that are so well thought out that all help bring Steins Gate to life, and I could go on and on and on about how brilliant they all are, but let's also talk about the music. On stage, you don't have the luxury of animation or special effects, so what do you have instead? You have music and dance. Of course, there's the big dance numbers like the opening, which is set to Hacking to the Gate, fucking awesome, or the Faris idol dance, also fucking awesome. But also because the story is mostly characters talking, music and dance just brings this energy to the performance that isn't even there in the anime, because it gives emotion and weight to so many little scenes and really helps accentuate all of the highs and lows and makes it really come to life. First, obviously, the idol dance scene. When I say energy, this is what I mean. This is exactly what you want to see up on a stage. And not only does this bring Daru to life better than even the anime, even just from the recording, you can really feel the energy this one performance brings to the whole damn play. It's fun, it's exciting, and it's something you can only get in a live performance. So believe me, I am not exaggerating in the slightest when I tell you that a lot of this is just simply the best that Steins Gate has to offer, and I am very upset that I wasn't there to see this. But it's not just the songs. Everywhere music is used is just so intelligent. In the scene where Mayuri speaks to her grandmother's grave, the piano is heavy yet gentle as the dancers in black lift her down to the lower stage, giving her this holy, angelic presence. When the IBM computer disappears and Okabe is frantically searching for it, the dancers in black crowd the stage and this upbeat techno track plays as he madly runs around the stage. And of course, when Okabe goes all full mad scientist and the music starts and the dancers come in and the lights start flashing. And trust me when I say this, because I don't use this word lightly, fucking epic. Like, yeah, this is 3D, and yeah, this is still Steins Gate, and yeah, it's awesome. Making this so musical is easily the biggest departure from the original, but it works super well because the producers clearly understood the medium they were working with, and just like the stage itself, adds these extra little touches that wouldn't be there otherwise. On stage, you don't have animation, you don't have camera angles, you don't have special effects, you don't have jack shit. You have people and you have characters. That's it. So focusing so heavily on music and dance brings back so much of this nuance that would come from all of these tools that you're missing. Obviously, the fact that Steins Gate music kicks ass doesn't hurt either. The last thing we need to talk about is, of course, the characters. The first thing you'll probably notice about them is that they are eerily accurate to the anime. You might even think they were played by the voice actors, they're so similar. And while the characters are really close to the anime, they are changed in several subtle ways. If you're paying attention, you might notice that some of the characters, mostly Okabe, speak a lot harsher and more directly than they do in the original. This is because it isn't a visual novel or an anime, it's on stage in front of an audience, and just like the musical numbers, this is done to give presence to the characters, who have very little to rely on other than each other's performances. I tried to reflect this in my translation, so this is why I have Okabe swear a couple times.
あのな、ちょっと天才だからっていい気になりよって、また死人な分際って。
What I want you to take away is that the actors, the writers, the producers, and basically everyone involved clearly understood each and every one of the characters and how to bring them to life on stage. So, while they are different, you might not even notice because it's just so goddamn well done.
さあどうするクリスティーナ。
だからティーナってつけるな。
悪かったなザゾンビよ。
When you put something on stage, you don't have a lot to work with. You barely even have the luxury of exposition. You need good characters to have a good play, and you need to make them the focus, and that's exactly what they went and did. And this isn't really related to anything, but the second thing I want to leave you with is that gravure modeling is a common thing actresses in Japan do to get exposure. So most of the actors have underwear and swimsuit pics out there. Just saying. You know, in case anyone needs to do any research into the plot of this anime. Okay, I'll stop. Just this one last pic of Kurisu. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that the reason this is so goddamn good is the exact same reason the anime is so good. It understands Steins Gate, it understands the story, it understands the characters, and everything they did, every single change they made, the stage, the music and dance, the energy, everything was to bring these characters to life. I'll talk about this again when I get to my Violet Evergarden book review. Ooh, a review of a Japanese-only book, that sounds fun, stay tuned for that. But when an anime perfectly understands the characters and the story it's dealing with, it can take the best parts and elevate them even more, and that's why Steins Gate is the best anime of all time. It isn't just a masterpiece, it's goddamn perfection because they managed to improve on a masterpiece in basically every single possible way. Before we move on, I want to talk about one last thing, and it's something that's hard to explicitly define in a review, but if you watch the speeches at the end, it's pretty clear that the entire cast has really good chemistry, and that's really important. They're all supposed to be close friends, and I honestly feel like these people would keep hanging out even after this production ends. Would they actually? I don't know, but they clearly get along.
寂しい。やってみればわかりますよ。いやこの体型じゃ無理でしょ。これしか無理。やるしかない。
I remember that before filming Lord of the Rings, they got Frodo and Sam to just hang out and be friends for like a year before they started production because they're supposed to be so close. And so when they come on screen together, these aren't just lines. There's a real bond between the actors that we can feel. And I get the same vibe here. Everyone seems to just get along so well. So now that we're done talking about how to improve on a masterpiece, let's finally move on to how to shit on it and mostly ruin it. I am, of course, talking about the manga. So this is a train wreck. I want to say it's because it's incomprehensibly short and abbreviated, but remember, the stage play is about a third the length of the anime, and it's still like really fucking good. Now, I'm actually not sure if I could recommend the stage play to someone who has never seen Steins Gate because I am way too familiar with the story to tell if it's still 100% coherent. But I think it's exactly as long as it needs to be to still be Steins Gate, and I could think of basically nothing they could have improved on without making it unreasonably long. It's that good. Whereas with the manga, just at a glance, I can tell there's so much wrong with it. Jesus. So let's try to figure out exactly what went wrong here, because boy, it was a lot. First, basically all of the important character building scenes are just completely gone. Every scene that does not have direct relevance to the plot, and even most that do, are just gone. The intro scene where he breaks the fourth wall and talks to the screen, his debate with Kurisu at the university, her putting on the lab coat. Remember how we were talking about how important these scenes are for their characters? And remember how I said the play works because not a lot happens in Steins Gate, but the characters are just that good? Well, imagine all of the not a lot happening and nothing else, and that's just kind of this manga. Let me show you an example. In order to condense Moeka's introduction, she shows up, asks him if he's seen an IBN 5100 in Akihabara, and then when he suggests that one of his acquaintances might have more than zero knowledge about this, she takes his cell phone, takes his email address, and then puts hers into his. Hello? Not only is this literally the entire fucking scene, this is, something Moeka would never ever do. Like, ever. She can barely speak to him and yet is able to just forcibly rumble through his pockets. Really. Remember that thing I said Mr. Braun would never do? Shoot himself in front of his daughter? Think like that, but with more emphasis on the never. And remember, she does this after he just suggests that he might know someone who has heard of the IBN 5100. That is just fucking crazy, dude. And then it doesn't end there, because then Okabe freaks out about Daru not having heard of John Titor because this random bitch made this one-off comment about the IBN 5100 before invading his personal space to an alarming degree. There's abridging a story, and then there's this. Now, the really offensive part of this is it doesn't just abridge it more than the original LK series, because if it just ran out of space, that would be at least understandable. But then it goes and adds stuff that doesn't need to be there. Like when they send the lottery email, Okabe reads his message history and discovers the D-mail before Ruka comes barging in with the lottery ticket. Why? We don't need to read the actual D-mail, you can take that part out. You did, but then you just added it back in for some reason in a way that doesn't make sense. Or when he gets the threat email, it actually shows someone following him, which completely undermines the point that his enemy is invisible. Probably the most egregious addition is where it shows us the secret D-mail that Moeka changes it to. What? Why the fuck would you write that in? It's supposed to be a surprise. Jesus, I literally can't think of any reason why you would do that. Maybe if you were planning to hyper-abbreviate her story later, but as we'll get to see, that is not at all what happens. Then there's these other scenes they just add in, like this whole weird speech about Daru playing hentai games in the lab. This goes on for like 10 fucking pages. Where are, I don't know, any of the actually important scenes? You know, all of the ones I was going on and on about earlier, none of them are in here at all. And yet there's this big fat meaningless bit about Daru playing eroge. Like, dude! So if the beginning of this is rushed, the middle of it is a fucking speedrun world record where it cuts out everything but the actual sending of D-mails. If I didn't know the story of Steins Gate back to front, I would be completely fucking lost right now. And even though I know each of the characters in and out, I'm super bored reading this because it doesn't have even the slightest bit of characterization. And when I say not even the slightest, I mean actually almost zero. Suzuha has 2 lines until she takes Okabe out for the bike ride and starts yammering on about her father, completely unprompted. 2! What? One of them is hello. Neither of you have any idea who the other person is, yet she's just yammering on and on about her father. This manga would be unironically better if Suzuha was literally just removed from the story without any explanation. I mean, when it gets to the point about finding her father, it cuts out everything but Mayuri pointing to the name on the time machine and going, look, it's Daru. I don't care at this point. Just give up already. Holy shit. Don't get me wrong, the biggest problem with this is that it's obviously just too short, and the random person they got to write it was not given the budget to write something even the slightest bit coherent. So there's no way this would have ended up anything but a terrible, empty rushed husk of the original story, and makes you wonder why the fuck anyone even bothered with this in the first place. But also, there's just so many questionable decisions in the rewriting. Some of them I kind of get, like you needed to condense the Moeka introduction scene. There's no way there wasn't a better way to do this, but I at least get it. But then there's changes that are not just overly condensed and not just weird and unnecessary, but actually contradict the story completely. Rounder Moeka is confident and badass. You can't... What? Where is this confidence coming from? This tells us that the entire autistic dysfunction thing, you know, the entire reason she was able to be manipulated so hard into doing this, is an act. So I can't even, dog. Did you know, watch or play Steins Gate at all before writing this? What? How did you come to the conclusion that this was a good idea? I'm actually curious. Actually, I need to clarify something here. This started running before the anime came out, got suspended, and then resumed and ended 2 years after the anime, now following the anime story instead of the visual novel. If this sounds like a fucking mess, well, yeah, I guess it's not a surprise that something went horribly wrong in production. I'm assuming that it was a cheap cash grab that was very poorly received, but then started selling like hotcakes as soon as the anime aired and became mega popular, and they had no choice but to pick it up again, even though it sucks ass. I have to put at least some blame on the author though, because this really is as much of a mess in writing as it is rushed. Sadachi-san, you can't cut everything and try to leave everything in. That's like trying to have your body pillow and jerk off on it too. Like in the scene in Moeka's apartment where she screams for the police. The reason he kisses her is because this old lady comes to check up on them and or tell them to shut the fuck up, and she leaves when she sees two kinky lovers doing some sex shit on the floor. But in the manga, it leaves in this kiss but takes out the old lady, begging the question why the fuck she would stop screaming. Because he kissed her once? What the fuck? Why would kissing her once put an end to this? It wouldn't. Just take this out. God, it's almost like she put actually zero effort into trying to understand why anything happens. You'll notice that the stage play actually cut this part out for this exact reason. And the really insane part is for how much it takes out and how much weird shit it still leaves in. It still tries to give tons of screen time for the payoff scenes, which is just baffling. This doesn't have any impact if there's no development. If you cut out all of the development, we literally do not care about anything going on. Cut the payoff a bit. Cut some of the bullshit that's lost all of its irony in the abbreviation, and use the space you save for character development. Now again, I'm not exactly sure how much blame for this should go on the author. In fact, since this was, like most manga, written to be serialized in a magazine rather than as a set story in a book or a visual novel, I'm actually pretty sure the second thing that went wrong here is they have to fit the story into X number of sections with X number of pages. So she tried to squeeze the story into these arcs short enough to fit into a magazine, which made her cut some sections more than others, leaving the pacing a confusing mess. But I'm not gonna put all of the blame on the publisher, because I know this isn't even a little bit the optimal way to abridge this. If you made 1 or 2 sections just slightly worse, you would have way more space to make the entire thing twice as good. And also, again, cut some of the bullshit without all of the irony surrounding it. It's literally just bullshit. Like, you might be wondering why I keep bringing up Moeka, and that's because it dedicates a full 23 pages to the scene in Moeka's apartment. That's almost everything that happens in the anime, including, for some reason, that kiss. And then that many pages again for the scene where they confront Mr. Braun. That's almost the entire thing. But 5 pages to the scene in the stairwell with Kurisu. 5! How is Moeka's arc by far the longest one in the manga? What on earth went wrong here? Where are your priorities, dog? This arc does not need 50 pages. Well, it does, but it needs them a lot less than any of the scenes surrounding it. Cut the Moeka arc in half and put the stairwell scene in instead, and then you can end the chapter with Okabe leaving the building, and then you have a few pages left over to make the kiss scene longer. Shit, it ain't rocket science, fam. In short, everything about this manga was a massive train wreck, and everyone involved failed on all accounts. Well, no, the art is pretty good. How long was this? 10,000 words? By my calculations, that should mean almost an hour-long video. Is anyone even still here? What a mouthful. I mean, I'm used to taking them, but this has to be my longest video yet. Was this a good idea? Was this productive? I script literally everything I say, including this, by the way, art is a lie, so please tell me if this was a waste of time or not. Also, what do you think about the idea of tearing apart an adaptation? I have a lot to say about the Violet Evergarden book, but that's all I have planned currently, so if this kind of thing is actually something you'd watch, please step on the like button and let me know. Lastly, if you're real into Steins Gate, check out my video on what Steins Gate is really about, and then my video on why neither the Steins Gate Zero visual novel nor the anime was actually written by people who understand Steins Gate. What? The world's greatest Steins Gate fan doesn't like Steins Gate Zero? Controversial, I know, but my goal here is to help people appreciate Steins Gate just as much as I do, and in hearing me tear it apart, I hope you'll gain a better appreciation for the original. I guess this video does need to end at some point, so if you're still watching, I want to give you a big thank you for all of your time, friend, and I will see you in the next video.